Okay, part 4 or lesson 3, however you want to think of it. We've already touched in multiple ways on your ability to disentangle. And what disentangling does is it really enables, empowers your voice, your expression, and your purpose, your service. So your throat and solar plexus chakras or energy centers. I think it's really important to mention here I'm just flooded with all the information that feels important to mention here. But one, it's that through the use of what we touched on in lesson 1 and lesson 2, how we use our voice, how we speak, how we engage language, whether it's verbal or nonverbal expression, that we do so in ways that aren't poking the holes in our energy bubble, because those holes, as we've said, are leaking energy. So we feel limp and exhausted, and ultimately then not very illuminated or inspired. The motivation feels like more and more difficult. And so that's like depression. As well as those holes are letting in more energetic, emotional information, inundating our sensitive bodies and overstimulating us, which often causes that short circuiting, and then all of the energy is in the head, anxiety. Worried about the past, worried about the future, not feeling very present. And so then we're not expressing our authentic purpose, because our authentic purpose comes through the present moment. And so does our peace. And so what I was going to get at when I said it feels really important to mention is that, the solar plexus is like our personal expression. That is like the center of our authentic purpose. Is what the common lingo around that center would say. But it's part of the lower energy centers. There's the heart and the upper energy centers, and then there's the lower energy centers. And the lower energy centers are very human. And humanness is meant to be quite primitive, which can be the opposite of spiritual. It's the equal opposite. It's the reflection. But in the being good and appropriate, we've been trained kind of to be like hoity-toity, even if it's a performance, and it's like hide the primitive stuff. And the primitive stuff is the bad, wrong, dangerous, don't do it stuff, the inappropriate stuff. And I won't get all into it, but the realm of psychology and the DSM and the, basically the rules for human behavior and the categories for normal and abnormal psychology, I would love to rewrite it. And let's say the problem people or the primitive expression is so shamed that We don't know how to do it in safe ways. And we've already mentioned the stomping and the breathing and the breathing and the scooping, you know, and notice the use of your body. Like, that's primitive. Moving energy through the body. Whereas it's promoted that healthy coping skills, I read a list the other day, and all of them pertain to using the mind to organize the experience or the energetic information. In this energy masterclass, that is not our goal. That may be a bonus that you are even more capable of because you are not dismissing your primitive impulses and you are engaging them, and you can engage them in really safe, self-loving as opposed to harmful ways. Because of lesson 1 and 2, we can do this. We can be as primitive as we are, which has been often in history deemed monstrous, inappropriate and unworthy and disgusting and low class, and primitive, not of society. And we are rewriting that because moving energy with the body is the whole fucking point of having this body. And the brain functions in that higher consciousness that we were talking about due to our willingness to primitively move energy through our tubular vessels. And so our authentic expression is always going to involve the embracing of primitive impulses, which becomes akin to intuitive impulses, the leadership of your feeling and sensing body, which ultimately is always in its own favor, is its own best friend. And the mind is a part of that friendship. But the mind has been promoted to be in charge and to figure it out and to be high functioning, when the mind is actually designed to witness the intuition and the impulses and to say yes, to follow the yeses. But when we don't have the permission and the practice of following the yeses, of riding the electric yes current, we build a strong relationship with resistance and rejecting, repressing, and that becomes our nature. It's not natural, it's programmed, it's conditioned. But we start believing it. And there's lots of people that are believing that that's the should, and that that's strength, and that's success, and that's togetherness and stability. Energy mastery at the level that we're talking about dissolves all of that BS. Kissing it goodbye. Thank you for playing a role in the hilarity of this horror show that has been human experience and human expression. And I'm here to enable, allow, create, be a curator of a completely different script than that through authentic expression. Noticing when my ego is engaged in the resistance, the rejection, any of that, and melting it, stroking it to participate in the centeredness, reminding it how relieving and reassuring this is, particularly in comparison to that, especially as we practice. And so as we practice lesson 1, 2, and this 3 is feeling and being protected and expressing from there so that you can feel safe being your authentic self. Not just in your inner experience, which is really what we were tapping into in lesson 1 and 2. And then this is like bringing it forward, letting it shine, being this in the world. And navigating authentically to where you're kind of pointing yourself. Is it in your family of origin? Is it in the home space that you're currently in? Is it on the internet? Is it in your community? Is it with whatever organization or business? Your compass. Lesson 1 and 2 enabled your compass and your contribution. And even though engaging that can stir up, like using your voice, literally the vocal cords, can stir up, can cause, initiate discharge of stuck stuff. It can help, but it can also be scary because of the need to discharge and all of the training to repress that. We've already dealt with that in lesson 1 and 2. And so now the voice is enabling further expression every time we use the voice, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, the expression of our experience, letting ourselves be seen and heard and held in an audience is witnessing. We might be stirring up more stuff, the fear, the doubt, the whatever narratives, the programming might be turned on or tempted. In lesson 1 and 2 attends to that, moving the energy, centering. And so what we're getting at is that it's, again, a cycle. It's always a cycle of moving energy up and down and around and through. And then coming into the center points is a cycle of, of bringing your attention in and then expanding it outwards and bringing it in and expanding it outwards. And that's a cycle. And so this is a cycle of expression affecting your own internal experience and the outer world, and energy cycling there. And so how to be the porous, sensitive beings that we are, at the same time as being the empowered, expressed, embodied people that we can be, that we naturally are, and perhaps have been programmed out of and are on the road to reclaiming. Is really practicing lesson 1, practicing lesson 2, letting yourself magnetize people who are into it also. And the discharging, the practice of discharging will also affect your landscape, and the letting go of things, people, relationships will intuitively arise to you. And if you ignore that, they will dissolve and collapse around you. And one way or another, you will deal with it through your tubular vessel and your center points. And you will make art or love to it, through it, in authentic ways. Because it doesn't shatter you. Their psyche is the strongest it's ever been. A psychiatrist that my baby daddy and I were working with told me that you can think of the psyche as glass, and that, really sensitive people or neurodivergent people have thin glass, and neurotic or more normal people, he was saying, have thicker glass. So their identity is more stable. And we address this with the stabilizing oneself with stories and thought loops, versus people who are more naturally flexible and can't really help but feel it all, which then enables them to be involved in different expressions of personality. And that can get confusing and can become shattering. And that's why it's described as thin glass. That's described by someone having more of the thick glass experience. I'm more of the thin glass category, and so I'm claiming it differently, where whatever thickness of glass my psyche is, if I'm thinking of it in that way, it is strong enough to tap dance on, motherfuckers. True that. I used to have a lot of meltdowns, letting the pressure build up and letting life suffocate me, being so sensitive, and it was able to penetrate my bubble and affect me. And I find myself psychic and sensitive in ways where I really absorb a lot of mental and emotional information from others, and I would get confused about what's me and what's other people. And I just found myself doing so much emotional labor without much recognition, because everyone just looked at me, thought that girl's always having breakdowns. But it's I was laboring and doing the grieving that other people were rejecting. And the more I realized that, the more I was able to use the lessons 1 and 2 to stabilize myself and create this ownership over my domain. I am self-possessed. I am self-centered in the way where I prioritize this relationship with myself. I prioritize the tasks of lesson 1 and 2 almost over anything else. And anything that is imperative for me, like taking care of my pets, my son, my stepdaughter, my work life. Prioritizing lesson 1 and 2 enables me to do that at next level ways. And then I'm sharing that. And my dogs and the kid and the people closest to me are the ones that have inspired me to go deeper and deeper into these practices, because I desire to perform well in relationship with them and to attend to the needs of those relationships without sacrificing the authentic expression, and to be a spiritual, benevolent person without sacrificing or suppressing or saying no to the primitive impulses that also are a part of being human. And so I haven't had a meltdown. I'm trying to think. I had a really intense emotional experience at my son's birthday, which is right around my birthday, and I'm consciously requesting of myself and the conspiring forces around me to help me heal birth trauma, both my own and my son's, and of giving birth. And so that was a peak moment, but even that didn't go into the place of meltdown, of like psyche shattering, like just having like just discharge, all of the discharge I didn't do. I was doing discharge leading up to that moment, and then that moment required all of the plans to be put aside, to prioritize the discharge of the intensity and the immensity of the energy that wanted to move through at that time. And I was resisting because I had a party planned and I wanted to give my kid a party. And I love hosting, but that wasn't the time for it, which is unfortunate in some ways. But it's not unfortunate because it's my devotion is so clear at this time. And so I would say that's the closest thing. That was the most I approached meltdown territory in a very long time. And so celebrating that. And what happens in a meltdown for me too is like the spiraling and like feeling entangled and like just being like flattened and so open that like all of the voices and all of the emotions of like everyone I'm connected to are there and present. It just drives you kind of crazy, and you can do crazy things expressing the like torment and the pain and the pressure of that, because you're not holding your own center, but it ultimately pressures you back. Like it like depletes you to the point where you come back to your own center. And so in that way, it would always be kind of refreshing, replenishing, because it would be like a clean slate. Okay, I'll try this life thing again from here. But it would take recovery from that meltdown. And I much prefer, in no way do I dismiss or send any derogatory energy to the experience of meltdowns, because I've learned all of this through that. And I set the intention for myself that I wanted something different. I wanted to be myself and to be high functioning in a way that really honored myself, that didn't honor the external definitions of high functioning or boundaries or protection that I felt bombarded with that just didn't quite resonate and I couldn't quite make sense of or apply. And so, learning to move energy through the tubular vessel and to feel my way into these center points and stabilize there as a place that's always available to me, always thriving. That is that clean slate energy, that I can go there with a breath, or with a few breaths, or with some practices, or with some support, whatever stage you're at. But now for me, it's like one breath and I can go there. And it's like, yes, 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 yes. And that is the best protection for expressing authentically, because whatever arises, whatever conflict or scapegoating or gaslighting or rejection or dismissal or contradiction or correction, shaming, blaming that you experience coming at you, you are like pretty imperturbable when you can take a breath and go there. You don't get swirled into the psychic chaos. You don't absorb the emotional chaos. And if you happen to, you know what to do with it. You have the practice noticing. Whew, this is overwhelming chaos. And it becomes quick. And and like those are the capacities that enable the like quantum leaping that people are talking about, the instantaneous manifestation. My kid is here. I'm gonna pause. Hi. This is Maru, my kid. Minor interruption, minor pause, and it's getting dark in here, which is actually cool. What just crossed my mind is that like, yeah, we are going deeper and deeper into the center points and making friends with the darkness, building our ability to see without seeing, building our relationship with energetic consciousness, with the language of energy as a primary skill and navigation tool and leadership expression. It's all happening. So, wrapping up this lesson 3, disentangled, strong boundaries through creative, authentic expression. And you don't have to be here if you don't like, or you can. I feel like I don't need to repeat the elements of the disentangled because I really went into them more than I thought I would in lesson 1 and 2. But it is really accessing through the practice of lesson 1 and 2, the discharging of energy up and down, and the letting everything inspire you and move you back to your center points, centered in the center of your column, your tubular vessel. That enables your play with your expression so that you can express freely, that you can respond rather than react, because you are tapped into and turned on by that stillness and silence, that deep peacefulness of your own sovereignty and power, where you'll be able to manipulate your sentences so that they are no longer entangling you, looping you, lassoing you to things, and like kind of tying you up in these entanglements. And when you're tied up, you are not expressing authentically. And even if you are it's like it's just only able to like seep out. It's not radiating in the same effective, pleasurable way. Mosquito. What's crossing my mind is just like distraction and your awareness being pulled out, and like children or our dependents really have that effect on us, or our partners, where we crave, desire, are in devotion to attending to that, and we can abandon ourselves in the blurred boundary that occurs in intimacy. And so the power to come back to yourself in a moment, or if it takes some hours or days to yourself, because you're practicing getting to that instantaneous, or because that's what your intuitive and primitive self wants, is some alone time to move energy and to be to have a steady extended experience in relationship to your own centers, without the calls on your attention. Full permission for any and all of that, and your ability to navigate and create that authentically while respecting external parties, being able to phrase your requests, your commands in effective ways comes more naturally. And that's the kind of thing that we can play with in workshops. And I'll introduce that in the next video. For now, I remind you that you may have kinky, take kinky, taboo pleasure in poking holes in your own energy field so that you get depleted and exhausted, so that you have to take that time to yourself. So that you get to come back to yourself, because coming back to yourself is so satisfying. And ultimately, playing with ourselves, with our tubular vessels, and with our center points is something that we can do in the face of distraction, with the distractions, or with the dependence, or with our devotions. And build up that permission between us, build up the reminders. It's incredible that moments where my kid's dad and I have been struggling at conversation because we invited him to take a deep breath. My kid, when he was struggling or having big feelings, to allow them to come out in stomping or vocalizing in primitive expressions natural to children, but already just so programmed out because he's also absorbing us that are still containing some of the programming, blah, blah, blah. We're having this moment of struggling and energy escalating, and he invites us, guys, will you take a deep breath with me? And then goes back to playing. And it's like, could seem inappropriate because has he been traumatized to take on the responsibility for his parents? Or has he been given the permission and the authority to express authentically, and is part of his authentic expression this level of energy mastery? And most of us didn't get that recognition and permission in our childhoods. I sure didn't. And just to let you know that is a story of success. And I have also been a monster as a parent and as a person. Monstrous expressions of frustration and meltdown. And so I'm coming from the experience of the horrors and of the incredible success beyond what I ever imagined was possible. And yet that, as a kid, I knew in my body was possible and missing. And from as a child, like inviting, still being in and of the mystery, still connected to my own centers, and still like just in natural ongoing relationship with primitive movement, primitive impulses of energy movement that hadn't been completely like whipped out of me, yet inviting that in the people around me, and then getting the whipping of like, you are a child and your voice doesn't really matter here. So all of this is really reclaiming the permission for our inner children, which is our inner innocence, to be the match, the counterpart for any mistakes or monstrosity that we've expressed. And this is an all forgiving, all accepting aspect of ourselves, which melts any resistance or rejection of ourselves emanating from these experiences. And that alchemy that's happening through what we've already been touching on creates a protection around you. It makes your presence in your body and your energy bubble so much less penetrable. And you end up doing less of the poking holes because you're getting your needs met without having to enter the collapse state of desperation. And then with the being in flow and the moving energy more consciously and consistently, your awareness of the, any psychic awarenesses or any emotional absorption or, sensitivity, empathy can be experienced as a gift as opposed to a curse or an illness. And I'm going to leave it at that sigh of relief. I'll see you in the part 5 summary video. Thank you again so much for your participation and your willing gaze on me and this information and this way of being. I love you.